So what is that basic requirement of a transducer? So the basic requirement for a transducers are, the first thing, it should meet the following basic requirements. First, it's the ruggedness. What do you mean by ruggedness? Ruggedness means whatever the transducer you are selecting, it should be capable of withstanding overload, and safe arrangement should be provided for overload protection also. Okay, so always it should be capable of withstanding overload. So this is the basic requirement. So withstanding overload, and at the same way you should take some safety arrangements also so that it can withstand the overload. Next is the linearity. What do you mean by linearity? Even in mathematics you are learning about that, right? So it means always its input and output characters should be linear. Okay, so always it should be having a linearity in the input and output characteristics. Then the third one is high output signal quality. High output signal quality. What do you mean by high output? For example, you are getting an output signal. So whatever the output signal you are getting, its quality should be high. That's what the statement is saying. So the quality should be high for the output. So quality should be high for the output. Okay, so that the ratio of the signal to the noise should be always having the high amplitudes, and the output signal should be enough. Okay, so next is high reliability and stability. Reliability and stability. So generally whenever you are doing a measurement, usually you will get a minimum error. Okay, so that way whatever the transducer you are using, it should also give a minimum error whenever there is a temperature variation. Because you see, if the environment is very hot around the device, when you do a calculation, that device will be affected because of the heat around the device. If the heat is too much, obviously the element will show a variation in its value. For example, the voltage can reduce or increase, current can reduce or increase, depends on the environment. So always temperature variations are also should be shown. So for minimum error should be there when temperature variations are there, like winter and summer, like that, depending on the surroundings, right? Next, good dynamic response means whatever the output it is giving, it should be very good, means faithful, means you should see that it is really correct. Just not taking a transducer and saying this is the value. It should be trustworthy, like how we say multimeter is a trustworthy. If you use a multimeter, obviously it will give you a appropriate value. So that's how a transducer also should be. It should have, we should have a faith on it when we are taking a function of the time or whatever it is, right? So always it should be faithful enough. The output should be faithful, whatever, depending on the input. Next, no hysteresis. So hysteresis means usually it can be a dynamic lag between the input and the output. Usually that disappears if the input is varied more slowly. Whenever you are varying the input slowly, very slowly. There will be a dynamic lag. So because of that, sometimes output can also show you a difference. For example, when you're doing the experiment, you shouldn't be very fast in varying. For example, you're varying an resistance, like how you did for Wheatstone bridge method problem, like a experiment. When you're doing that experiment, you are supposed to vary the variable resistance, right? You shouldn't be very fast. In the same way, you shouldn't be very slow also. That a lag, that small lag also can make some difference in the output. So that is called as hysteresis. So this shouldn't be there. Okay. If when you are varying the input from low signal to the high signal, or maybe from high signal to the low signal, depending upon your requirement, it shouldn't have any hysteresis. Okay. So no. Next, residual deformation. Residual deformation. So residual deformation means there should be no deformation on removal of input signal. For example, you are doing long time. It means when you are applying a force or input, suddenly there can be any change of shape to the circuit or whatever it is. Like that, there shouldn't be any deformation. Okay. So these are the basic requirements a transducer wants. The basic requirement for transducers are like below. So all these should be required when you are selecting a transducer.